Hello, and welcome to Dateline USA. I'm Duncan Elkinson, and it's my pleasure today to be your host for this installment of Dateline, which we've entitled Footnotes, The Art of Beth Bachenheimer. Welcome, Beth. Today we're enjoying and examining the art of Beth Bachenheimer. Beth is a native Angelenan. She was honest enough to admit that she was born at the original Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. She graduated from high school at Rolling Hills High School in the South Bay, and began her art studies at Chouinard Art Institute, which at the time was in downtown LA. Yes. She graduated from the California Institute of Art in Valencia with a Bachelor in Fine Arts and holds a Master of Fine Arts from Vermont College in Vermont. Beth, welcome to Dateline.
Thank you.
It's been a joy getting to know you this week. I've been taken by your witty and whimsical approach to an art that is full of social and economic and political and historic thought. How much of this came from your teachers? How greatly were you influenced by putting history and politics into your art by people like Dr. Paul von Blum and Howard Jepson, Millie Roque?
Okay, Paul von Blum was the real motivator in political art. I mean, he was with Mario Savio in Berkeley, and he had gone to Mississippi during civil rights, and he teaches political art, and he's written quite a few books. But I've known him for years, so I always got charged by him. And I always felt that that was a real integral part of my work. I also know that I grew up with going through the first civil unrest downtown and trying to give food to our cleaning ladies by going through the National Guard and having to be, checked and everything before we gave food.
So your art is a product of your upbringing? Yes. That very turbulent time of the early 60s that I remember so well.
Right.
And you were taught by people like Miriam Shapiro?
Yes,
and John Cassone?
Right. Miriam Shapiro was a mentor of mine for 2 years.
Great. And you've been influenced greatly by several famous California artists, George Herm, Bruce Conner, Hannah Hawk, and Betty Sayer. Tell me how they've influenced your work.
Okay. Hannah Hawk has to do with the Berlin Dadaist. So she was the woman, one of the only women that was in that particular movement, and she influenced my work a lot about how strong she was, about her images, about just being forthright with what she has to do in her art, and she did a lot of collage.
Ah, which you're doing a lot of now yourself.
Right.
In your assemblage work. As early as 1971, you were using shoes as art?
Yes, I was. I was in a project called Woman House, and it was under the auspices of Miriam Shapiro and Judy Chicago, and affiliated with the California Institute of the Arts. And I had done 2 rooms there.
Great. And by 1989, you were working in masks.
Yes.
Tell me what masks say for you.
Oh, they say quite a few things about hiding is one of them. And being able to put on all different kinds of faces with still not being honest or not being seen. I also has to do with political imagery, because I've used a lot of them. Like I have a piece called The Political Scream, and it's just somebody screaming out, and it's all in red, white, and blue. And I have another piece about the Persian Gulf War, which had to do with me being influenced with the high school kids that were going to Persian Gulf War and being excited about it. And I have and it has Mickey Mouse in it pointing at somebody with a shroud of the American flag.
Yes, I've seen that piece, and it's very powerful. By 1994, you were back to shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to spend rather a lot of time today talking about your shoes. But I think it's important for our audience to know that you started as a ceramicist.
Yes, I did.
Spent a lot of time in drawing and in oils.
Right.
And what turned you to sculpture and assemblage in the mid-90s?
Well, I would say that the influences were affecting my artwork in the mask making. They were becoming more assemblage oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened was, as I was doing my research for a thesis, I found out that I was more impacted by working along the lines of the California history that I grew up with.
Great. And you're represented by the Korea Gallery here in Santa Monica. You've shown at the Edward Garradino Gallery in Santa Ana, and you have a gallery in Portland, Oregon, the Mark Woolley Gallery.
Right.
Great. And your shows include the Division of Labor at the Museum of Contemporary Art, a one-woman show that traveled throughout the nation of Colombia, where you also lectured. Your art is represented by Art Pool in Budapest.
Mm-hmm.
You've shown at the Holocaust Museum here in Los Angeles, as well as the Arm & Hammer.
Yes.
There's one show in particular that you're proud of. That's a show that was entitled 1964, Who Owns the Memories, Who Owns History?
Yes.
Could you tell us about that one show in particular?
Yes, I had the opportunity to meet with Matt Gleason, who was a curator, and a friend of mine had actually had us introduced, and she said that I would be a shoo-in for the show. And George Herms was somebody that I really, really admired, and Lynn Folks I knew about because a friend of mine had written his catalog, but also I knew his work from years, for years. Also, Jay DeFeo was somebody I had done a lot of research on, and she was in San Francisco and did the big Starburst, which is like, I think it's like 2 tons. And Warhol, and it was all about the 60s. And I remember Lynn Folks asking me what I was doing there, and I was there representing the beginning of the feminist movement in '64. Mm-hmm. That's actually when the feminist movement started. Not necessarily the art movement, but the feminist movement.
Mm-hmm. And you consider yourself a feminist artist?
Yes.
Feminist in the sense of empowerment?
Yes. I like to know that I have control over what I can do. Mm-hmm. That I'm not second to anybody or anything. That I know that if I want to go for it, I have the power to do that.
What about the image of the feminist in your art?
I'm using shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And using shoes.
And a lot of them.
Oh yes, a lot of them. I have lots in storage. I had used them in the Division of Labor show in the Museum of Contemporary Art, and it was a room 7 feet by 7 feet by 4 feet, and it was all women's shoes. And I had actually made into assemblages or collaged or put all kinds of objects on them.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we worked together this week, you told me to remember that shoes symbolized timelessness. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
The universality of shoes?
Well, I think that, first of all, there's a whole history of shoes. And some of the early parts of history in shoes has to do with what's going on right now, because we still have the same functions. We always had feet. It's just the shoes are being constructed more and more. I also remember that we talked about when somebody is well-heeled, that means that, you know, they either have a lot of money or they're really, you know, spiffing themselves up for a job. It means they have a certain decor about them.
Okay, so let's start with the shoes. Let's start with some of these wonderful shoes. This week I've gotten to see more shoes than in a shoe store. I remember fondly your Marilyn Monroe shoes. There were the Monica Lewinsky pumps in plexiglass, encased in plexiglass. What were some of the other shoes that aren't with us today? These boots are made for walking.
Yeah,
the Nancy Sinatra shoes.
Sinatra. I have rain boots with umbrellas on them with little crystals, so it has the feeling of glittering like rain glitters.
So for the last 5 or 6 years, you've been shoe oriented.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the first work, the ones that we named the show after today, Footnotes, the piece that the credits were shown over as we opened today. Now, we haven't talked about that together because I only saw it yesterday for the first time. And I have to tell you, I'm quite taken with it. It's stunning. It's very witty to the point of being sly. From the outside in, it almost looks like a true grand piano that someone's dancing in with that very, very lacquered black plexiglass frame that you've put it in. Tell me what your inspiration for Footnotes is.
Oh, a friend of mine had given me parts of pianos, and I knew another friend was working on music in relationship to art. And I realized I had these high heels, and I thought if I could glue those piano pieces together and put those shoes on it, I would create something about walking in music. And in the context of dancing, my background had a heavy classical music background in piano. My brother had to play violin. We only were allowed to listen to, classical music in the house. And they were lacquered with violin music underneath them. I just feel that they're a footnote because it's about walking on the music or walking. Footnote also entails, like in academia, where you have to write a note if you're using a reference. So I'm not trying to figure out what my references are right now. I just know that it felt very upbeat and it feels complete. And not only is it in a black box, it's like a black lacquered piano.
It's a very sophisticated piece, which is somewhat a departure for some of your more naive work.
Right.
Tell me why the obvious sophistication here in Footnotes.
I've been very influenced by folk art and by other people. And I know with my own self that I've become more sophisticated. And I wanted my art to reflect where I am right now. Okay,
and this is very much a touchstone for you today because this is this year's work. This is 2000. Great. And do you plan to show it somewhere?
Oh, yes.
All right. Let's take a look at another piece of work that you've done this year entitled Indian Wedding Shoes. An entire departure, a 180-degree turn from what we saw in Footnotes. Tell us what we're looking at here.
Oh, we're looking at compulsive behavior. I always put things in I was trying to be a certain kind of minimalist in doing assemblage and have everything a certain way, and what I decided to do was explode. Now, in exploding, those are wedding shoes. And what I noticed is that the wedding shoes are very clumsy, but they're also the beads are from India, so what I was considering was that there's so much globular culturalization going on right now. When I say that, I mean like weddings are like mixed, there are less boundaries, and I feel like the wedding shoe is pretty insignificant to what's really going on.
Let's talk about construction for a moment.
Okay.
You took beads from India that were made of what?
Ceramic and metal.
Okay. And they're anchored to the shoes how?
Well, they were attached to a ribbing so that you could buy the beads by the yard. And so I bought probably about 25 yards of these beads. And I just kept wrapping them. I have a real thing about wrapping, which is also supposed to be a feminist process. I really like to wrap things. And I was really feeling comforted by wrapping the shoes.
Were you conscious of the fact that the shoes were becoming larger, bigger, heavier?
I wasn't really concerned about the heaviness of the shoe. I was more considered about the obsession of just letting go and knowing that I needed to do something that was very decorative and explore the issues of why wedding shoes? Why didn't I use just tennis shoes? And
They're
why
fun shoes for certain.
they have to be, because I had a great time making them.
Finishing them off with the blue bows
Mm-hmm.
is like putting a bride and groom on the top of the cake when I look at them. What were you thinking about in those blue ribbons that finished off the piece?
I needed to finish off the piece. Even though I had all that craziness with the beads, I needed to have some place that was really quiet and well contained, and that would merge the two shoes together.
Mm-hmm. And this is again a piece from this year. Let's turn to an earlier look you took at weddings in your bean counting shoes and your bean counting house of 2 years back. Tell us what's going on with this very different look at the institution of marriage. Would you please, Beth?
Oh, yes. I know we've had a discussion about bean counting and how in our government and in our social mores it's more accepted to be married or bonded with somebody else. So even the government gives you a tax write-off. Things are a lot easier financially. And I'm single, which means that I take the brunt of taxes and have to pay a lot more than, let's say, someone who is married, because there's nobody else, paying for the electricity bill but me. I also was at the time I was thinking about, relationships shouldn't be about bean counting. It should be about love. But what happens is when you do get married, you find out that you're counting beans and growing more beans as you continue.
So you've taken a pair of very traditional wedding shoes and literally filled them to the brim with what?
White beans that have been numbered all the way to 700. Each one has been numbered separately.
So you have 700 beans per shoe.
No, I have 700 beans for the two shoes.
That's a lot of beans.
I know. It was a lot of time.
And each bean represents what to your mind?
It reminds me of a certain amount of frustration with money. It also has to do with how when you have a marriage, you continue to build upon your relationship, not only in a loving way, but in a financial way, and you have a broader base and more security to go on with your life.
I saw the romanticism, the optimism of those beautiful white wedding shoes weighed down by the ponderous burden of these beans that you'd filled them with. What were you doing?
I was also saying that just because you have these beautiful shoes, it doesn't mean it's going to be a fun trip going anywhere.
Very much a political and social statement.
Oh, yes.
About all of it. Next to the shoes, you have what you call bean counting house.
Well, I've used also a wedding accessory, which is usually put on one's head when we get married. It's antique, and it's also a little tiny house with rice paper, which is also part of the wedding. But inside, there are many layers of beans being glued to the floor. And they aren't built up, they're just the beginnings.
And here I see the mirror image of the shoes, because unless you look very, very closely through this romantic bouquet and its billowing ribbons flowing down over the house, you don't see that the house is weighed down with layers and layers of beans.
I know, it's sort of like hiding there. It's like, oh, isn't that a great house? It's so gorgeous, that little piece, and then you open it up and there's like a contextual remark that's being made right now.
And is there a balance between the romanticism and cynicism that you see as the institution of marriage?
Not yet.
I must tell you that I was quite taken with them.
Well,
particularly the shoes. And that brings us to what's between us. What's come between us, Beth?
Oh, a heart has come between us.
This is entitled Underpinnings, and this dates from 1997.
Yes.
And this may be your most bold political statement of all. Explain Underpinnings to us, would you please?
Yes. I had done a whole series of work on the heart. I did a lot of research on the heart, romanticism, anatomical research, did a lot of drawing, thinking of it in social context, and romance, and basically anatomically.
And so you sought to put your feelings about this, not only mechanism, but this romantic symbol into a three-dimensional form.
Right.
It's both a heart and a heart within and without?
There's no heart within. It's got computer chips within.
Are you talking about the body or the body politic?
I think it's both. Body politics is probably more appropriate.
Would you like to explain the case that you're using for it?
Yes, I'm using a arts and crafts clock form. It's not an original arts and crafts because it was made in Japan and has some great interesting paper on the back of it. But I also had to sand it down and put a lot of layers of red paint on it in order to create the quality of, not only is it's red, but it's also about blood and life and coming through.
So hidden behind the joyous and anatomical features of the heart, which you've chosen to represent in party favors, is the cold silicon world of a computer chip.
Well, I think that's what's going on right now in a lot of our work. We're interacting with the web.
And yet on the outside, you're still trying to portray the heart in a romantic sense. The heart on the sleeve, the gilded heart valves.
Yeah.
Tell me what's going on outside the case.
Well, what's going on is that, you know, life is sparkling. And if we don't have our heart, then we don't have any sparkle in our lives.
Are you upset by people wearing their heart on their sleeve?
No, I think it's straightforward and more honest. People don't do that enough. I think it's because people want to protect themselves from being hurt instead of like going with their feelings and stating how they feel or what they need for themselves. I think there's too much of the hiding of the heart in our culture.
What do we do about those computer chips inside, though?
We try to melt them down so that, we go to therapy, I know for one thing. But I think we have to have a balance in our lives, too.
Well, great. Thank you very much for explaining underpinnings to us. And let us bring ourselves up to date with something that's truly the opposite of all this. It just is an explosion of color, profusion of emotions, and that's called My Beautiful Garden Shoes. Now, I looked at it fully in the photograph when I saw it the first time. I looked at it fully 2 minutes before I realized it was indeed another shoe art. What's going on here?
It's an explosion of flowers, celebration, taking the right path. I always think of when someone's taking the right path that there's a lot of flowers around it. I also feel that it's about joy. Also, since they're boots, they're very sturdy. They were very sexy boots because they have a heel on them and they'd go with a little label just below the knee. And so what I was doing was demystifying the sexuality in those shoes.
Why the profusion of flowers?
I was influenced by a project I was working on, and I decided to just use these flowers, and I really wanted to just see where I'd go with it. I did a lot of art earlier on in my life where I was using a lot of exotic flowers in my two-dimensional work, and I wanted to see how it could work and be combined with the work I'm doing now.
Well, as a three-dimensional piece, as an assemblage, tell me, is it the garden within or the garden without?
Oh, it's my garden within coming out.
I think that's a beautiful garden to have. Let's look at our last piece, one of your more current work, and a departure. I'm almost sorry to leave shoes for the moment, but we're taking on another symbol, this time angels, and this piece is entitled, If These Wings Could Fly. And I think that's a great way to wrap up our show by talking about where you're flying. Tell us about If These Wings Could Fly.
Well, it's about being unified. I feel more unified as a person. I feel that my assemblage takes me to another space, meaning that I use different different materials than I would use before.
Yes. Take a moment and explain the materials that you're using in wings.
Okay, I've used a flag holder as a centerpiece. Everything's been attached to an old plant holder, so which has been rusty for a long time.
Which represents arms?
Yes. And there are gold wings that have been painted. They're actually bird's feathers made into larger wings and then painted gold.
The obvious symbolism of the angel.
Right, knowing that I'm always protected.
Great.
There's a milagro. Milagro means miracle in Spanish, and it has to do with the heart and knowing that I have to know that living is even a miracle.
And that's a very salient center of this entire piece. You have a heart there.
Right.
All right. Now, tell me about the spoons. 3 faceless spoons crowning the angel's wings.
Well, of course.
What's happening?
Well, we know about the traditional trilogy, but it's also they're teaspoons and they're silver teaspoons. So
they're beyond that. They're iced teaspoons.
Oh, that's right. Well, yes. Well, I always think that that's part of who I am, the elegance and everything about having to know that there's a combination of using antique and new and all different kinds of different stages in political and economic life that can be combined together to make a whole.
Great. And in terms of your feminist manifesto, does this represent timeless to you also?
Oh, most definitely.
What about image, particularly a feminist image? We see so many angels now, taken straight out of the pre-Raphaelite angels.
Right.
And this is a very different angel. This is an angel of a different color altogether, isn't it?
Yes, it has to do a lot with strength.
Again, back to the empowerment that you've been searching for. Right? What does the future hold for Beth?
Oh, I will be showing extensively very soon, and I can't give you any specifics, but I'll keep you posted.
Okay. And I'm going to want to stay in touch because I've been quite taken. Beth Bachenheimer, thank you so much for being with us today on Dateline USA. For Dateline, I'm Duncan Elkinson, your host. I want to thank everyone involved with the show for making this beautiful art project possible today, and particularly thanks to our artist, Beth Bachenheimer.
Thank you.
And good day. You were absolutely